then that's it, because it's the truth. Mm-hmm. I come really, really hard. Mm-hmm.
Well, I assume you're all up to speed on the Jussie Smollett case, how this was proven to be a complete victim hoax. And since the case has already reached its conclusion pretty much, I figured we'd do a post-mortem, an autopsy if you will. We'll go back over the case, try to see if we can pick up all the signs that this was a hoax, and maybe we can learn a few things about how to detect in the future all the clues that tells us if a story is a hoax. Now, I had looked into a similar victim hoax that we had inside the skeptic community about a year and a half ago when Pagan Minotaur claimed he was a victim of a dox threat. Now, the thing about the Pagan Minotaur case that caused so much suspicion to arise is the problem that there were so many improbable aspects to his story. It was improbable that his vegan neighbor would know about his anti-vegan YouTube channel. It was improbable that that neighbor would obsess and take drastic action just to get a couple of old, unwatched anti-vegan YouTube videos from a tiny YouTuber. The more you looked into the story, the more improbabilities sprung up. And when a story has improbability after improbability, that's a sign that a story is likely a hoax. Now, the reason you get a lot of improbabilities in a hoax is because if you tell the truth, most of the aspects of that story will be probable because they're based on truth, and the truth always leans towards probability. However, when you make up a story, the lines of probability are not your goal. These hoaxers have a specific agenda that they use to construct their story around. And when the fabricated aspects of the story combine with the actual true details of the story, this often reveals stark improbabilities, and I'll show how that happened both in the Pagan Minotaur case and the Jussie Smollett case. So let's go over the Jussie Smollett case and see if we can pick up on all the improbabilities in his story.
What happened that night, Jussie?
When I landed in Chicago, and Frank Gatson, who's like my uncle, and he's also my creative director, and he picked me up, and then we got back to the apartment. There was no food. And so I went out to Walgreens thinking that they were 24 hours and to have a smoke. Walgreens was closed. So I called him up and I said, hey, I'm gonna run to Subway, which was across the street, and I'm gonna get a salad. Do you want anything? I went to the Subway and got the order.
Okay, there's our first improbability right off the bat. Deciding to go out into the streets and walking around in sub-freezing temperature at 2 a.m. We're gonna call that an improbability. Now, it's possible that he was really hungry, that he got a bad craving for a Subway sandwich, so he decided to brave the cold weather. But overall, it is unlikely that he would do that, so that's improbability number one.
And while he was on the phone, I heard, as I was crossing the intersection, I heard Empire. And I don't answer to Empire. My name ain't Empire. And I didn't answer. I kept walking, and then I heard Empire. So I turned around and I said, did you just say to me?
So there's two quick improbabilities right there. First being that someone would recognize him in the dark from behind. He stated that after they shouted at him, that he turned around. That means they were behind him, in the dark, on a dark street. Very unlikely to recognize him. The second improbability is he said that he turned around and confronted the people shouting hostilities at him. Now this is 2 o'clock in the morning, inner city Chicago, and anyone with a lick of sense who knows anything about Chicago would never turn around and confront two complete strangers shouting hostilities at you in the street late at night. This is the streets of Chicago. A lot of people are packing heat. It's very foolish to turn around and confront such a person. That sets you up perfectly for being robbed. He was near the entrance to his apartment building. The smart thing to do is keep your head down and quickly get inside that building. You'd want to hurry away from people like that. not turn around and confront them, especially when you don't have a gun, and they probably do.
And I see the attacker masked, and he said, "This MAGA country," punches me right in the face. So I punched his ass back. And then we started tussling. You know, it was very icy, and we ended up tussling by the stairs. Fighting. There was a second person involved who was kicking me in my back. And then it just stopped. And they ran off. And I saw where they ran. And the phone was in my pocket, but it had fallen out. And it was sitting there. And my manager was still on the phone. So I picked up the phone and I said, "Brandon," and he's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "I was just jumped." And then I look down and I see that there's a rope around my neck.
Okay, this is the part of the story where we're going to interject about the threatening letter that was sent to him at the Empire studio a few days before this alleged attack. First of all, let's look at the similarities between the attack and the letter.
In fact, the week before the attack, police confirm a letter was sent to the Fox studio in Chicago with threatening language.
He said, "This MAGA country."
Do you think there's a link between the letter and the attack? And you did mention it to the police right away about the letter.
Absolutely. Just because on the letter it had a stick figure hanging from a tree with a gun pointing towards it. Down, and I see that there's a rope around my neck.
As you can see, both the letter and the attack both had the word MAGA. They both had mentions of racial hostility because he's black, and they both involved a noose. Now, here we have which is probably going to be the two most serious attacks on him in his entire life, just a few days apart, and both had substantial similarities. Now, what does this mean? This means that the letter and the attack are linked. The similarities are way too coincidental. Now, there are two possibilities as to how both the letter and the attack are linked. Either this was a hoax, or he's being targeted and attacked, and the same person or persons are involved in both the threatening letter and the attack. Now, remember how I stated earlier how certain facts come into the story and reveal stark improbabilities? Well, this is a perfect example. You see, if he's telling the truth and the two are connected, this means someone is targeting him. If someone is targeting him, this means that that person was lying in wait for him to attack him. This means the attacker decided to lay in wait at 2 a.m. in extremely cold weather, lying in wait, ready with a rope, ready with bleach, out in the freezing cold at 2 a.m., just in case there's a slight chance that he would come out of his building and go to Subway.
Too much like a movie.
Yeah.
It was a bad movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's 9 below zero and two people are lying in wait just in hopes that he might come by at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean,
So that shows how certain known aspects of the situation, combined with a story that the hoaxer has crafted, to reveal what can be very stark improbabilities, which can then reveal the likelihood that the whole thing is a hoax. And we saw that come into play in both the Jussie Smollett hoax and the Pagan Minotaur hoax. And as far as successfully getting the noose around his neck, I would consider that to be somewhat mildly improbable. Smollett claimed that he fought them off and did get a successful punch in. He also said it was icy where they were fighting.
So I punched his ass back. And then we started tussling. You know, it was very icy. Who might watch this to see that I fought back? And it does not take anything away from people that are not able to do that. But I fought back. They ran off. I didn't.
So I think it would be quite difficult to get a noose around someone's neck in those conditions. The reason it's so difficult for police officers to get handcuffs on a person who is resisting arrest is because putting on the handcuffs occupies both of his hands, which makes it difficult even on a subdued suspect. Putting a noose successfully around someone's head in icy conditions while he's fighting you off, I believe would be difficult and unlikely. I think keeping the noose around his neck is also improbable. I think most people would be so creeped out and frightened by having a noose around your neck by someone who is just trying to kill you. You're going to want that noose off your neck this second.
I noticed the rope around my neck and I started screaming. And I said, there's a rope around my neck.
And I'm not even going to get into the red flags that went up due to his body language during that interview. The interview was rife with duping delight and convincing statements.
Desperately trying to convince you they're telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do a lot of times what are called convincing statements. Rather than just telling you what they did or didn't do, they'll do convincing statements like, you know me. Like somebody saying, somebody stole the petty cash in the office. I think, you know me. I give more money. I donate more money than was stolen. I mean, you guys know me. I mean, I was Employee of the Week last year. You know, they're just convincing you that they're this nice guy.
Listen, if I tell the truth, then that's it, because it's the truth. Mm-hmm. Did I make that up too? But I'm not going to do that.
Why?
Because I have private pictures and videos and numbers. My partner's number.
2 hours later.
My family's number. My castmates' number. My friends' numbers.
2 hours later.
My private emails, my private songs, my private voice memos. I don't know what that's going to be to hand over my phone.
I'll leave a link in the description about another video that goes into the body language a bit more. So there you have it, folks. Whenever you hear about these stories that just seem a little bit off, always give these stories a raised eyebrow and an angled glance. Look for the improbabilities to stack up, and you'll be able to catch it when the Tonka Saws, the Pagan Minotaurs, and the Jussie Smollets of the world come round with their bullshit.